Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me. We're now less than 2 weeks away from graduation, and I'm sitting here with three remarkable seniors, Andrew Knox, Rachel Nghe, and Servet Bayimli. So tell us a little bit about your majors and what you're going to do when you leave Amherst.
So my name is Servet. I'm a senior from Brooklyn, New York, majoring in law, jurisprudence, and social thought. I'm Turkish American and the first in my family to go to college. I'm fortunate that next year I'll be getting my master's in public policy at Tsinghua University as a Schwarzman Scholar. I also recently found out I am a Varkey Foundation Fellow, so they will also help cover some of my costs in China, but also provide some mentorship for me through my time in China, but also afterwards in my professional career.
Servet, that's wonderful. And before we go to Rachel, explain to us all what a Schwarzman Scholarship is and what the second scholarship that you've received will mean going forward.
So the Schwarzman Scholars Program is modeled after the Rhodes to kind of use education as a form of public diplomacy and to enrich the education and the professional careers of students worldwide. So this year is its inaugural year, and we're fortunate to have about 40 students from the United States, about 20 to 30 from the rest of the world, and about 20 or so from China. And altogether, we're going to go to Tsinghua University for 1 year of intense leadership, intense public policy and comparative government studies, and then hopefully use that to be the backdrop for whatever kinds of different changes we want to spearhead in the world.
Of the 40 or so Schwarzman scholars chosen from all over the United States, Amherst will have 3.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. 1 current student and 2 recent grads as part of the group.
Which is more than most schools, yeah.
Yeah, we're very proud of you.
Thank you.
Rachel, tell us about yourself, your majors, your interests, and what you're going to do.
Okay, so my name is Rachel. I am also a graduating senior. I'm originally from San Francisco, California, and I'm a political science and Asian languages and civilizations double major, pursuing the International Relations Certificate. And after graduation, I will actually be working for the Department of Justice Antitrust Division in San Francisco, California.
You probably know that 86 to 90% of Amherst grads go on to graduate or professional school within 5 years of graduating. Are you intending to go on to graduate or professional school?
I will certainly pursue like a professional degree.
Wonderful. And you're glad to be returning to San Francisco?
I am. So I'll be with family, living with the family for a year. And but San Francisco is a great city, so I'm really glad.
And Andy, you're returning to California too. Tell us of what you're going to be doing.
I'm working at JMI, which is a growth equity firm that invests in software companies. I, along with Servet, I was an LJST major, so I have much more of a qualitative background than quantitative. So I'm really excited to go to JMI and work on my quantitative skills, and I'll be working with 4 other Amherst grads. So Amherst is very well represented at the firm, and I'm also planning on going back to school, and the plan as of right now is to pursue a JD MBA, and to continue to develop my qualitative skills and my critical thinking and writing skills, and also kind of get a more formal education in business.
Well, all 3 of you have been very active on campus in addition to doing great academic work. I wonder if you would tell us a little bit about what you've done outside the classroom. Rachel, why don't you start?
I've actually been working for the Multicultural Resource Center for 3 years now as a peer diversity educator. So kind of being on the CDO search committee, the MRC director search committee, and just doing a lot of diversity programming throughout my last 3 years has been something I didn't expect coming into Amherst College. And just I think like being a voice for a lot of Asian students on campus is something I also didn't see myself doing as a first year here at Amherst College. Other things I do, I also work for the admissions office, and I'm a peer career advisor at the Career Center. So I think a big focus of what I have discovered that I like doing here at Amherst is like really connecting different resources to students in need of them. So even having cross partnerships between different resource centers, such as the Career Center and the MRC, has been work that I've been trying to do in order to benefit more students, particularly students from like disadvantaged backgrounds or students of color. Because I'm also personally, first-gen student, woman of color from a low-income background. So I would really want to help other students who are younger and serve as a mentor for them.
Rachel, you founded or refounded the Asian or Asian American Students Organization, is that correct?
Yes, the Asian Students Association, which actually encompasses both Asian American and Asian students on campus, international students. And so that is actually a result of me kind of working for the Multicultural Resource Center and realizing that there hasn't been much of an Asian voice. And so this year I kind of worked reinstituting the Asian Students Association so that there could be more of a voice for Asian politics, Asian voices, Asian identity on campus, which didn't exist the last 3-4 years that I've been here.
Andy, tell us what you've done on campus.
The most meaningful work I did outside the classroom was with Big Brothers Big Sisters. I joined the program kind of at after hearing about a number of my teammates on the football team had participated. So I've been matched with Caleb since the spring of my first year. And so that's been a very kind of meaningful experience for me, being kind of being a positive male role model in his life, and being able to watch him grow and mature through his middle school years and now into the first 2 years of high school. One thing that I really enjoyed during my time here was working on the newspaper, and I was the managing editor of the sports section and got some great kind of managerial leadership experience. We had a staff of 12 writers underneath us, and then another 3 or 4 editors. And so that was a great opportunity to stay engaged with what was going on campus, and also to have kind of a voice in a student publication.
It must be hard to leave Caleb after 4 years.
It will be. He's also moving away from Amherst. But we're still in touch, and we had dinner last week, which was really nice, and is going to be coming to the graduation festivities in less than 2 weeks.
That's wonderful. Servet?
So when I first got here, I was involved with the student government, with mock trial, Model UN, just running around doing a bunch of different things, trying to find my interests. And funny enough, like those 3 were the ones that I kind of stuck with through my time at Amherst. I think student government, I think student government's really given me a window into seeing how the student body's shifted, both in terms of the voice it has on campus and the kinds of activism that different class years bring. I think it was really a profound moment for me to both see leadership and mentorship through upperclassmen and how they responded to both acts by the faculty and the administration, and how it was incumbent upon me at that point, when I was a little older, to set that kind of example for underclassmen, and showing them what student voice could and ought to look like on this campus. And at the same time, being on the mock trial team is something I've been on mock trial since high school, my first year of high school, and it's something that I've just carried on, kind of creating this family for people who are away from home for the first time and who just come together with this unique interest of acting and argument. And mock trial has just been a very special place for me.
Servet, you talked about the sense of community that got built when the mock trial teams traveled to other colleges and competed. Do you agree that we've learned over the past few years at Amherst that we need to build stronger, more different opportunities for people to gain a sense of belonging and community?
I think so, but I don't think that's unique to Amherst. I think in any kind of setting where students are coming in from all parts of the world for 4 years, they haven't had to make new friends for 4 years. They're in this whole new setting. That these little pockets of family that they could find really make this place special for them in one aspect. But also, I think the introduction of maybe some traditions to bring students together in a much larger scope would really be a good thing for this campus. I think over my 4 years, at times when I've seen students come together, it was at times of emergency or crisis or something was happening that needed a student body response, a unified student response. And I wish that, and I think to create this community a little bit more strongly, traditions might be the answer. A way to bring students together in a non-competitive way where they could just enjoy the company of each other. And I think it's a hard thing to do, and I don't really know how it would get done. But I firmly believe that that could be an avenue for building more community in this campus.
Yeah, I think the introduction of the branches this spring was very positive, and I think a number of their events have been very well attended, and the branches bring together a number of disparate groups on campus, individuals from disparate groups on campus, and creates a very special kind of community atmosphere. And the events are open to the entire student body, and those are events that I think should be continued moving forward. They've been very positive, and I'll be very be keenly interested to see how the branch program progresses and how the school is able to create communities outside of athletic teams or extracurriculars, but ones that are able to bring together individuals from all different parts of campus.
Explain to our viewers what the branch program is.
Branches were started by a number of students on campus who felt like there was a void here in which they found it was sometimes difficult to bring students together from different parts of campus. And what they proposed and what's been adopted here at Amherst is a program called Branches, which are inclusive social groups that bring together students from all different parts of campus, and they're given funding by the school to not only hold branch-specific events to build community within branches, but also to create social events open to all students.
Among the three of you, there are many languages. Tell me about your study of language and what languages you all speak.
So I grew up speaking Turkish at home. My family immigrated from Turkey many years ago, and so I brought that to Amherst. While I was in high school, I took Spanish for 4 years, and then I continued that when I studied abroad in Spain last year. And then following my year in Spain, I started taking Japanese, and I've continued that at Amherst as well, because I studied abroad in Osaka in my spring of junior year. And now I'm studying Chinese for my upcoming year, so those are my 4 languages.
I spoke, or my first language was Cantonese. I also currently speak Cantonese at home. And I'm also fluent in Chinese, and since I've been here as a first year, I've started taking Japanese. And so my freshman, sophomore, and junior year, I've been taking Japanese. I also studied abroad at Doshisha University in the fall of my junior year. So come back, study Japanese a little bit more, and then I stopped this year. But those are the languages I would say I'm definitely, fluent and proficient in.
How about you, Andy?
I spent high school and some time at Amherst studying Mandarin, and in high school spent time at a high school in Beijing with classmates of mine and a teacher from high school, and continued my study of Mandarin here. But I'm not as proficient as I would like, so I'm hoping to continue my study post-graduation.
What do you think you'll miss most about Amherst?
The main reason why I chose to come to Amherst were the people that I met on my visit, and I think more so than anything, when I leave Amherst, I'm going to miss my classmates and friends that I've developed over the past 4 years. And prior to arriving at Amherst, I think, like a number of other students, I was very apprehensive. Coming from Southern California, where the culture is very different, and going to a small school in New England, I think there was a culture shock. But I've loved my time here.
I gotta add to that. I think the people will certainly be what I miss most about Amherst College, but I also want to add on, it's really just the opportunities to take risk and to really explore what I want and what my passions are, because I feel like I've done that throughout Amherst. My freshman year here, to be very honest, I struggled a lot. There was a lot of culture shock. There was a lot of trying to find where I belong on this campus, finding that team that we were talking about, which I couldn't find as a first year. But I think like being able to overcome all of those obstacles and find where I do belong on campus, what I do love doing on campus, and like the people I do it with is there are things that I don't think I'll be able to find elsewhere, and I'll certainly miss that a lot.
What do you think changed for you after your first year? Have you looked back at that and wondered?
So since Amherst College is such an elite college, I think my first year, it was really finding out, or a feeling of mediocrity amongst like a lot of amazing people. And so that was like kind of a big hurdle that I think not just me, but a lot of students have to go through. So like I said in the beginning, like diversity work is not something I had looked into and not something I had expected myself to do. But being able to find that passion and then seeing that there are opportunities on campus to see it grow is, that's an opportunity that I found. And that's something that has changed for me. Stepping out of the comfort zone, looking outside of the box of what you thought you were good at, and like trying out all of these different things is, I think, quintessential to the Amherst experience.
That's interesting. What would you say, Servet?
I mean, I think along Rachel's lines, it's kind of what Justice Sotomayor talked about when she came here, about this imposter complex of, her being on the court and among, such amazing legal scholars, where here students are around such brilliant minds that at first you feel as if, everyone is better than you, and that it takes some time to build that community and sense of belonging to the campus. A friend of mine and I were talking about this innocence of college, where you don't have to know, for these 4 years, you don't have to know your next plans. You just have to be in the moment, where you have to kind of do whatever you want, challenge yourself, do things you've never done before, and really explore who you are and the kind of person you want to become. Build, and there's a certain kind of innocence to that not knowing, not having to have a plan, that I'm going to miss, because once I leave, I know that I'm always going to have to be thinking ahead. And I think there's a certain innocence that Amherst brings to that I'm really going to miss.
I was going to ask you what classes or class you would say you learned the most from, or if not learned the most from, enjoyed the most, or what maybe challenged you the most?
So when I first got here, I was looking through the course catalog, and I came across this class called the Tea Ceremony in Japanese Culture. My mom used to work for Japan Airlines, and so we always had this plum blossom motif tea bowl in my room. And I never really knew what it meant or what it was about, so I showed up to the first day of class. And I never really got the memo that a 100-level class was easier than a 300-level class. So here I am on my first day of school in this 300-level seminar on the tea ceremony. And I'm the only first year, because we did introductions. And there are like 3 or 4 juniors and 3 or 4 seniors, and that was it. It was Professor Sam Morris who was teaching it. And he handed out a bibliography. And I came from a big public high school in New York City, and I had no idea. I thought a bibliography was just something you put at the end of like your essays as like your sources. No, it was 5 pages of all of the books and articles and everything we had to read for the class. And I immediately freaked out. I had to petition to get into this class. So I begged the professor to let me in, and after he let me in, now I had to sit down with him and say, I can't do this work. And so after I sat down with him, he was understanding, and he said, if you're not going to take my class, go take a different art class. So then I went to my advisor, Professor Gilpin, and she listened to me talk about my anxieties about why I didn't want to take the class. I was really just scared about the work. And she said, you're just a whiner, stop being a baby. I'm not going to let you drop this course. And so ultimately I ended up going to every single office hours with Professor Morris. It felt like at times I didn't know how to read, because the idea about reading about aesthetics and about art was so foreign to me, because I'd never done it in high school. And so it really pushed my thinking into a direction I never would have thought that my first year of college I would be thinking about a tea bowl's interaction with an incense container, a tea scoop, and the space in the tea house around it, and where the tea house was. And by the end of the year, probably the best thing I got out of the course, besides a deep understanding of traditional Japanese culture, was this relationship with Professor Morse, to where I was frequently invited to his house for dinner, or just to have a conversation about, Korean tea bowl aesthetics versus Japanese tea bowl aesthetics. Ultimately, that propelled me to study the tea ceremony in Japan when I went abroad. And there, even then, I had a good working relationship with his daughter, Catherine, who is the Amherst Doshisha Fellow. And so even with her, we had gone to different temples in Kyoto, traveled around East Asia together. And so this one kind of risk that I took of taking a class that, the tea ceremony in Japanese culture that I never thought would have taken, had allowed me to not only go abroad, see East Asia, but build two really meaningful relationships, both with Professor Morse and his daughter, Kat.
Beautiful.
It's actually one course I took sophomore year, one course junior year, one course senior year. And the first course is actually a course called, in sophomore year, is a course called Race and American Politics with Professor Ashley Burns in the Political Science Department. And I think that was also the year that I started doing diversity work on campus, and I think that class, it was one of the first classes where I felt like my own experiences mattered, where I was able to talk about how my identity as an Asian American related to the political atmosphere of the class, of this world, of America. And it was basically able to connect what I do outside of class with something that I do within the classroom. So it's connecting the academics with the extracurriculars, which is something I never imagined doing. And then the second class I was going to talk about is Modern Political Thought with Professor Andrew Poe. As a political science major, I consider myself more of a pragmatic political thinker as opposed to a theoretical one. So I kind of hate reading about political theory. But it was actually not until the final moments before I turned in my final for that class was when I realized how amazing sort of like political theory is. Because Professor Poe, throughout the entire class, he always told us, relish in discomfort. Just relish in whatever you don't understand. And then the last class is this year I'm taking, it's called Crime, Punishment, and Politics Punishment, Politics, and Culture with Professor Servet. And I think this is probably the most thrilling class I have taken because every single class I'm in, I'm 100% engaged. It's a 2.5-hour class. I just feel like it's the most engaging and thrilling class I have taken here at Amherst College.
Fantastic.
So I had the privilege of taking a number of really great courses in the LJST department, but the one that sticks out in my mind was the jurisprudence of occupation with Professor Hussein. And he was not only an incredible academic and thinker, but pushed me to excel in so many ways that I really hadn't received prior to taking his course. I think in that semester alone, I grew as a writer and as a thinker, exponentially. And he not only were the texts engaging that we read throughout the course, but his ability to synthesize information and to put them into comparison with other readings and events gave the class an incredible amount of color. And to this day, I really long to take more courses with him before he took his leave of absence and before he passed. But he was an incredible mentor for me and someone that really inspired me to pursue a number of kind of the academic offerings that I've taken since then. And he really was a tremendous educator and tremendous mentor and advisor. And his course was by far my favorite at Amherst.
Servet, I said I wanted to come back to the work you've done on foster care. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you've done there?
When I had started college, I knew I was interested in social justice, but I didn't really kind of have a really specific interest in channeling that energy. And I thought social justice was too broad of an idea that I wanted to kind of focus on a specific aspect. So that summer, my mentor had suggested that I work at the Children's Law Center of New York, which is a nonprofit law firm that represents 8,000 children in New York City every year in custody, guardianship, orders of protection, child support cases. When I first started, I would go home oftentimes and be very upset at some of the stories that I heard, but even more so I felt empowered to kind of stay in the system and affect some sort of change. I think one thing I wanted to do was to be a voice for the voiceless, and I thought this was the perfect avenue for that. So I went back the summer of my sophomore year to do specifically policy work, and there I worked on mainly post-adoption sibling visitation, adoption subsidy fraud, and broken adoptions as like my three main policy areas. And I was fortunate that summer to go and present at the National Foster Parents Association in Florida, the American Bar Association in DC. So it was really kind of getting the voice out there, and I had started working on my first law review article with the Capital University Law School. It was until then I had kind of just built up I was doing a lot of learning, but also a lot of advocacy. And then eventually my mentor and I at the Children's Law Center and I were invited to go consult basically to help build Ireland's first children's rights practice in Dublin. So when I was studying abroad in Madrid, I flew over, thanks to your office, to go to Dublin and speak to them about practices that are working in the United States that Dublin could adopt. And at that point, we were also invited to speak at the UN's 25th anniversary on the adoption of the Convention on the Rights for the Child, to speak specifically about the interdisciplinary nature of child advocacy, how that when you're an attorney for the child, you need to make sure that child's developing correctly, has appropriate social skills. You need to know the difference between an immersion burn and a contact burn. You're that child's psychologist, you're that child's teacher, you're that child's social worker. You have so many more roles than just being an attorney, and what that means for having that child's voice heard in court. And then once we gave a talk about that, we were approached by a bunch of different countries and academics from there who want to adopt similar models. So I'm very excited to say that what started as a small internship in Brooklyn by my freshman year led to international conferences thanks to Amherst by the end of my junior year. So I'm very grateful.
It's amazing. The last question I have for the three of you is whether there's something that occurred while you were at Amherst that will be a story you tell over and over again throughout your lives.
I do. The story is actually from the same course I just discussed, jurisprudence of occupation. And Professor Hussein offered a deal to students in all of his classes, starting kind of in the middle of his semester. And the deal was that if you chose to accept, that he could ask you one question about any of the course material. If you got it right, you got an A in the class, and you didn't have to do any work the rest of the semester. But if you got it wrong, you'd get a D, but you also didn't have to show up the rest of the semester. But what his offer was a manifestation of was a very kind of deep-seated conviction in our abilities, and he, and I think it was more so due to naivete and being a little younger, but I chose to accept the deal, I think 2 weeks before our final exam. So, it really wouldn't have made all that much of a difference at that point. And he asked me a question about a minute detail from a film we had watched for the course, and I froze and worried in that instant that I was going to get a D on my transcript, and I would have to explain to my parents how I'd gambled my grade on one question. But luckily the answer popped back into my head. But I think more so than anything, that deal that he offered, I think really forced myself to evaluate, how deep of a conviction I had in my knowledge of the course, and taught me a lot about calculated risk taking. If he were to offer me that deal again today, probably wouldn't take it. But it really did teach me a lot about risk management and being able to step, if you have conviction in something, to take a step off the deep end. And I did it. It worked out. And I'm the first and only student to have ever accepted his offer. So I take special pride in that.
That's fantastic. That's a great story.
I think one story that I'll tell over and over again is when I was studying abroad, and my program was heavily concerned with Mediterranean studies, and we had done, a part of my program involved taking a trip to Greece, and while we were in Greece, we made it to Santorini, one of these islands. And the way to get on top of the island was to either take a cable car or to ride a donkey. And so I, of course, made the bold decision of riding the donkey. I'd never ridden a donkey before. I grew up in New York City. And I remember that, you know, I made it all the way up. My inner thighs killed me. And then so, I saw Santorini, it was beautiful. And when I was on my way down, I realized that I had to make the same decision, either a donkey or a cable car. And these are steep hills. So I could only do this one time. Let me take the donkey down. And it was much harder. And what happened was when I flipped my leg over the saddle, my camera flew out of my hand because I wanted to take pictures as it was coming down, and the donkey started charging. And so I lost my camera, and I made it down because I had to make it to our cruise ship. This donkey was charging down, and no one was really kind of there to stop the donkey, and I was just kind of screaming, and it was one of those moments where it was this is what college is all about. Riding donkeys in an island that you've never been to before, down a hill, losing your camera, and it was really, really enjoyable. And I think that's one of the moments that I'll never forget about study abroad.
Wow. Yeah, that's what happens in college, sure. That's how I experienced it too. You got a story?
The story that I tell people is freshman year, Multicultural Resource Center never existed. It was in the basement of Keith, but it was through the students, through the administration that that the center moved to a very central part of campus. And now, literally, the center has transformed into a place that so many students will call home. And I think seeing that progression, seeing how it has changed throughout 3 years has been amazing for me. It's been something I really, really appreciate. But I think it also speaks to how this college, whatever happens, is really because of the students. The students make the changes here, and it will change. I feel when we come back here 5 years from now, this place will look completely different. And I'm ready for that. I'm ready to embrace it. And then the second story I want to tell is actually more dedicated to someone, and she's the reason why I'm here at Amherst College. She is Servet and my very good friend, and we went to the same high school. I didn't know about Amherst College without her. And it was literally, we were in this honor society together, and she was this executive VP of that honor society. And then all of a sudden during graduation, I realized she was in student government. She was in all of these different things. She was just to me, a phenomenal person. And so I look up what college she's going to, and I see Amherst College, and I say, where's Amherst College? I've never heard of this place before. And so that's when I first got exposed to this college, this institution. And then I followed her, and I came here. And she actually also works for the Department of Justice in DC. And so now I'm following her footsteps, working for the Department of Justice back in our home city. And then she's actually also going to work for the Antitrust Division as well. So in her words, we're cut from the same cloth. So I think without her, I wouldn't be here. Without her, I wouldn't be the person I am. So at the same time, it speaks to mentorship. It speaks to people who are very important in your life, and she's one of them.
That's wonderful. Who is it?
Christina Wan.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Give her my best. You must be in communication.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. You were really wonderful. You are wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This was fun, actually. I had a great time.